Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I am sorry that I'm later than you were starting. I think we had a confusion on time zone differences. But we can get going and move things forward if that is good for you.
It is, and it's my pleasure to have you with us here, speaking to our Indian pediatric rehabilitation community. We're so happy we have your time, and I'm so happy to introduce Dr. Guenzel. I'm sure everybody knows him at this point, and thank you for having us here. He is an experienced clinician, educator, and a DIR Floortime expert. He's also the CEO of ICDL, and he has dedicated his career to helping children with developmental differences and supporting professionals and families who work with them. We are grateful to have you with us here, and we'll have a insightful session with you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. My goal for today is just to provide some introduction to what DIR is and what DIR floor time is, and hopefully in a short time help people get some glimpse into why this works so well and why so many people are turning to floor time. Floor time, its name is not a great name. I'll be very straightforward about it because Dr. Greenspan, who was the developer of DIR and DIR floor time, and I'm going to explain what those are in a moment, he did a lot of naming things by describing what he saw. And in his world, when he was working with young children, to help a parent be truly and a professional to be truly present and connected with the child, it was about being willing to get down on the floor and be with that child. And so he called it floor time because it was represented being fully present with the child in what I refer to just about any other developmental approach, in that there's a lot of things people do that are healthy for development, that are in the way teachers may teach. They may engage in more of the child's ideas versus just teaching them information. They may really work on how the child's developing their capacity to think rather than just giving them information. There's lots of things that people may do that are very healthy and good for development, but there actually isn't much out there, and I would argue not a single other approach that has such a robust framework for explaining why this works and explaining why following the child's lead and engaging with the child, why these techniques actually work. Because when we talk about in floor time, if you heard this before, one of the things we do is follow the child's lead. It is not about doing whatever the child wants. It is not about the child gets to control everything. It's about that we want to discover what's going on inside that child. We want to discover what is really happening inside their mind and not just force them to do what we want them to do. You know, we want children to comply and do what they're supposed to do. That's all important. But we want to discover what's happening inside their minds, inside their bodies, and help them express that to the world. And the way we do that is by starting with following them and following what energizes them, even if it doesn't make sense to us. But when we truly do it, it is one of the things, working with parents that are struggling connecting with their child, helping them follow their child's lead in a way that they are willing to try to figure out what's happening for their child, and not just try to teach their child things, which has its time and its place, but to really connect. I'm always amazed at how quickly parents will have these moments of, oh my gosh, I did not know my child thought this or felt this, or and these moments of incredible connection, And then once that happens, then everything therapeutically, developmentally becomes easier. So I'm going to stop babbling for a moment, and I'm going to share my screen if I may, and um, put up a couple slides. This is a small slide deck. I'm not going to go through every slide, and I'm going to jump ahead to this. So I asked ChatGPT to give me a picture of a mother and her son playing with a yellow ball. If you come to my 101 course, for some reason, I end up using a yellow ball as an example for different things. I don't know why it became something I end up referencing, but one of the things you'll often hear me say if you hear me lecture and you come to the one-on-one, I might say this exact phrase to the larger group. How many 4-year-olds hold up a yellow ball to another 4-year-old and say something like, say yellow, say yellow. 4-year-olds don't do that to other 4-year-olds. Why do 40-year-olds do that to a 4-year-old who's having developmental challenges? We as adults think we need to always teach things, and we do things where we actually get in the way of good play, and we hold up that yellow ball like, say yellow, say ball, and that's just not again, there's a time and a place to teach. It's not that there isn't, but when we take what is really good organic play. And play is an incredible um, platform for development. It is the way kids naturally develop. Play integrates emotion, it integrates motor, it integrates cognition, it integrates all of these systems in the body in such a beautiful, natural way that is hard to reproduce. It's hard to reproduce a way that you can interact with all these body systems at one time. We often, as professionals and as adults, we try to be precise and we're going to focus on just communication, or we're going to focus on just motor planning, or we're going to focus on praxis or sensory or whatever it is. And that's, again, everything has its time and its place. But for so many of our kids, that are struggling, it's not about the fragmented development, it's about the integrated development. Because part of what their challenge is they're experiencing their development in a fragmented way. They're experiencing their emotions and their motor development in some respects next to each other rather than integrated. So they experience, let's say, a sensory experience in a really intense way, but in a way it's almost disconnected from their emotional experience. But the reality, and they're experiencing their emotion oftentimes in a really intense way. And the reality is we experience emotions and sensory together. They're integrated. And what we want to do for our kids that are struggling to have their minds and bodies be as integrated, our goal needs to be that integration. And play is just a beautiful platform for that integration naturally to happen. We can focus on specific challenges the child may be having, but play is just a beautiful way to naturally integrate it all. So anyway, so I asked ChatGPT to give me a picture of a mom and a child playing with a yellow ball. And this is the picture it gave me. And I have not with certain pictures I make changes to the pictures for presentations I do internationally. And honestly, I try to make the pictures look more like the families that I'm presenting to. I was just in South Korea and Thailand and places all over the world. And I'll change my pictures to try to really just connect with the local culture and people that I'm talking with. But this picture I haven't changed, and I didn't change it when ChatGPT first made it because I was amazed at what ChatGPT as an AI platform knew about this process of play. So I asked ChatGPT, give me this picture of mom and child playing. And they're not quite looking at each other. It's a little bit weird in some respects when you really start looking at the picture. But there's joy, right? Mom is happy, child is happy, the ball is there. There's joy in that play. And then I asked ChatGPT to give me a picture of the same mom and son, but mom is trying to teach the child the color yellow. And ChatGPT knew that that wasn't going to be a fun experience. And this is the picture it gave me. Even AI knows when we turn good play into we have to teach something, it changes the whole process. Mom is not smiling the same way. Now it's clearly an AI picture. The ball is kind of floating, right? Like, but that's the part that I didn't want to change. I didn't want to because I could have had it adjust it and make changes and make it look more real. But I wanted to get kind of the first thought that the AI had about it. And I wasn't necessarily expecting this, but it's information we know, I guess is my point. It's information the world knows that when we move away from the joyful play and we try to turn it into teaching, a lot of times what happens is the child becomes more disconnected, the child even gets frustrated, and the adult starts to focus more on what the goal is of the play rather than really engaging in it. And in some respects, in this first picture, mom is believing that her child can learn the color yellow, right? She's having what we would call presuming competence, but a belief that my child can do this. And the child has that sense that you believe in me. And in some respects, in this picture, the child's having to prove himself before he can play, right? He has to identify that color yellow before he can play. And that is a very different way of thinking about human development. It's not presuming competence doesn't mean we believe a child can do or a human can do anything, but it's having this belief that when we set the right stage for things, development can happen. And that's a big part of floor time is it's not about training for certain things like some other more behavioral models that focus on training children to do things. It's about if we set up the right structure that is cultivates development, that we can see development flourish. And it works beautifully. It's I mean, I wish I could um, just give you all the families that I've seen in our institute. So ICDL, the International Council of Development and Learning, we're an organization that's been around for 36 years. Dr. Stanley Greenspan, the original developer of DIR, founded the organization really to be a home for DIR and floor time. He knew that he needed an interdisciplinary group to move it forward. And that's what we do. It's an interdisciplinary group. Originally, the organization's name was Interdisciplinary Council on Development and Learning. We changed it to international in recent years because we've moved from really being in a few countries. When I started leading ICDL 13 years ago, we were really effectively probably in 6 different countries of insignificance. We now have trained practitioners in about 100 countries and people that have attended courses with us in over 150 countries. We now teach courses in I think about 24 different languages with experts that speak those languages. The international growth has been incredible. And so we shifted our name to the International Council on Development and Learning. But he really created it to create this interdisciplinary team to move this forward. And so that's what we do as an organization is we challenge people about how they think about development and learning. And we make some distinction between development and learning, which maybe I can talk about in the 101 course, because development isn't just about teaching a child to learn something. Development is how the human grows from the bottom up, and how we help them grow from the bottom up. Um, and truly, if we don't invest time in developing the human, it's really hard to teach them things that I think of it more to the teaching from the top down and development from the bottom up. If we don't invest in the development, it's really hard to teach things from the top down. But when we invest in the development and we really get that developmental process moving forward, it becomes much easier to teach things from the top down. And what I mean by top down is, when a teacher is teaching something in a classroom and it's kind of outside the child, they have to process that information. It's coming into them from the outside in, and that's similar to the top down. And in many ways, in the brain, it's coming in the cortex. It's coming in the top of the brain in some respects, rather than the bottom where they're feeling it and experiencing it in a different way, in a more, if we get into the brain science for those that may be interested in that, in a more subcortical way from the bottom up in the brain. But we can talk about that in the one-on-one course and what that means and what that looks like. But we make some distinction between development and learning. But anyway, as an organization, this is what we do, is to really try to help people understand how this developmental process happens, because there isn't another framework out there besides DIR to really explain it, how it all comes together, how it all interconnects. And then Floortime as the unique approach that utilizes that. There's other approaches that actually use DIR as a framework, but not in the specific way that Floortime does. So, where am I at time? I'm going to go backwards a little bit, and I'm going to show as long as I didn't scroll too fast and my computer didn't freeze, I'm going to stop the share for 1 second, because I want to show the video that I'll show in the 101 course. And I'm going to pull it up here again. I apologize. I scrolled a little too quickly, and something happened there and stopped it from. Well, there we go. One more second, and the screen will be back up. Go. And I apologize for every once in a while with PowerPoint, when I scroll too quickly, it doesn't keep up with me. But I'm going to show this. This is the first video in the DIR 101 course. It's a Floortime video. This is a speech and language pathologist working with a young child. This is a therapist and a child in Australia, actually. And what you're going to see is an interaction that doesn't include really any prompts for words. All the sounds you're going to hear really are in the background. There may be some little whispering with the therapist and the child, but it's really not, she's not using words. But there's incredible communication happening. And in this process of the interaction, what she opens up for the child is an ability to initiate communication. In so many situations, when a child is struggling to communicate, what people will do is prompt the child for a response. So adults, therapists, parents, teachers will prompt the child to try to get the child to respond to them. In this video, you're going to see this therapist, not that she's prompting for a response, but she's creating an environment with him, an interaction with him that he wants to reach out to communicate to her. That is creating a situation where he's initiating communication versus just responding to communication, which is huge. That is a extremely big difference and very, very important for creating active social agents rather than what I would often say victims of communication. Sometimes I think we end up making our kids with developmental differences, with autism or other developmental differences, almost victims of communication because it's so pushed upon them, and they have to perform in order to get something or to get a reward or whatever it is. This is about creating that human connection, and then creating the opportunity that the child is reaching out to her. So for those of you that'll come to the 1-1, you'll see this again and we'll talk about it in more detail. But let me play this and I'll explain a little bit more on the other side.
Oh, we're nearly done. You're waiting. Oh, what are they doing? You're gonna say bye. Bye. Not yet. We're waiting. Why have you been following Maddie around today? Yeah. Oi, that was cheeky. Yeah, I saw that.
And you can, again, all the noise in the background. And this isn't just about speech therapy. This is about how we connect as humans, and parents and teachers and psychologists, like how we help the child communicate to us rather than just respond to us. And she's had her hand out here for a while now, but he's going to end up reaching out to her.
Watch your feet, Michael.
And he leans his head to the side, she leans her head to the side. That's kind of an example of, just a real quick example of when I say being present in a whole body way. Yes, they're on the floor, and that isn't necessarily doesn't matter in a sense, but he does things and she does it with him. So he leans his head to the side. Does she know why he's leaning his head to the side? Not necessarily. It could be for the occupational therapist that may be here. It could be for more proprioceptive reasons, that he's connecting, kind of grounding his body using this beanbag, crash pad, whatever it is. There may be some sensory reasons for that, but she's just following him. And because he feels that sense of, you're with me, and you're interested in what's going on with me, his reaching out to her expands.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Ooh.
And he gets to show that he is very interested in what's going on with her, and gets the opportunity to share his interest in her, and not again just to respond to her, but to actually reach out, to actually initiate communication. And that is maybe for some people it's a subtle difference. It maybe isn't as pronounced as I see it. But that is developmentally a very big difference. So many therapies, working with children that are struggling to communicate, work to get them to respond to, and one of the challenges, what they're responding to is more neurotypical communication typically, and their brain is wired differently in a more neurodivergent way, if you use that language. But a lot of times the prompts aren't the prompts that their brain can process well. And so one of the beauties of following the child is that we're the adults, especially the professionals, we're the ones with the advanced degrees. I'm the one with the doctorate and I'm working with a 3-year-old. I'm the one that should be figuring it out, not putting it on the responsibility of the 3-year-old to figure it out, right? And so I take that responsibility and figure out what can I do to communicate with the way their brain is communicating with the world, rather than force them to communicate with the way my brain is communicating. But when I figure out how their brain is communicating and I can connect, like in this video, she got him to a place that he was reaching out to her and he was initiating communication. Once you get that, then you can expand it, right? You can expand that communication. It's not just about communicating the way the child is communicating, but we got to get the shared communication happening, the shared world happening. And when we can connect with where they are at, then we can build that. Then we can expand it. Then we can help them get to a place that they can communicate with a broader range of people, and people that may be communicating a more neurotypical way that is particularly challenging for them. But we do it from getting inside where they are at and building out. I'm going to explain one last thing, and then maybe we go to some questions. I had just talked about getting inside the communication and building out. If you come to the 101 course, I'm going to talk about a single bullet point in the thousands of bullet points in the course. It's a 12-hour course, so there's literally thousands of bullet points. There's one bullet point that is my favorite, and it talks about floor time being an inside-out approach. And that example of getting inside the communication and building out is an example of that, where we're getting inside how they're communicating, and then we're expanding that, we're building it out. When we play with a child, a lot of times people use what I would call outside in play. They bring a game to the child and try to entice the child to play the game. And again, I've said this a number of times in this short presentation, there's a time and a place for that. But it's outside in, it's outside the child, and you're trying to entice the child into it. In floor time, what we do is we get inside whatever the child is doing, however they're playing, even if it doesn't make sense to us, even if it feels like it's not functional. They're just rolling the car back and forth, or they're lining up the cars, or whatever it is. But we join in that. We join inside the play, and then we look to expand and elaborate it and build it out. So much of what we do in floor time connects to this inside out approach. We're really trying to connect to what's happening inside that child. So many times people get lost in what they see on the outside. They get lost in the behaviors they're observing, and try to change those behaviors and try to work from the outside. But the reality is the behaviors we observe really are just manifestations or results of processes that are happening inside. So if the child is struggling with their sensory experiences that are happening in the room, you might see them either yell or try to run out of the room or retreat to a more hidden place where they kind of hide in the corner. And if we just think about the behavior of he's running out of the room, we have to stop him from running out of the room. That's managing the behavior and trying to change the behavior. But if it's because of their sensory experience, if we get inside of that and we really start to understand what is happening in that sensory experience and how is that impacting their ability to engage with others, then we get to more the root causes, the root challenges. And then we can build that developmental process from the inside out. And then they'll be able to be in that room in a much more successful way without actually ever really addressing the behavior. And it's I would suggest a very misguided way of thinking about helping children, autistic children in particular, when we focus on behaviors, because the behaviors are not where the action is. The behaviors are what we see and what may be challenging to us and may be, disturbing to other people. And we have to be aware of that. And there's times where we might have to manage them to some extent, but we got to get to what's underneath. We got to get to the inside. And floor time gives us that ability to get to the inside. And DIR gives us a structure for understanding what's happening on the inside and gives us a structure for how we can actually do it. And when we do it well, it works extremely well. The last thing I'll say, particular to autism by definition is a neurodevelopmental disorder. If you look in the diagnostic manual, it's defined as a neurodevelopmental disorder. It is not defined as a behavioral disorder. Yet, people manage it, oftentimes manage children, autistic children, as if they're managing their behaviors and changing their behaviors. What we need to do to really help a child with a neurodevelopmental disorder is to understand that neurology and how that neurology is developing and impacting more broader systematic development and help support that process. Floor time as a developmental approach gives us an ability to do that. And it's extremely effective. There's lots of research to support it. And I'm thrilled that we're seeing such an incredible expansion worldwide. And I'm excited to be coming to South India to be able to try to open this up more, because we need more people in India really seeing this and engaging in it. We have certain areas of the world that we just haven't seen quite as much of a shift from our perspective as an international organization. And we're very much invested in helping share this more and educate more people in India about how this developmental process happens and how floor time can help promote it. With that said, we'll pause and see if there are questions or how we want to move forward. I'll turn to our host, Floreo.
Thank you so much for that insightful talk. I think we will have some questions. We have some questions jotted down, so I'll probably start with those. And if there is any question, the attendees may drop it in the chat. All right, so to begin with, how can DIR Floortime be implemented in a resource constrained environment, something like a school strategy, anything in that terms?
From how to do it in schools, is that what you're asking? So, in schools, there's really two parts. One is the DIR framework, without ever doing floor time, can really help inform schools about the foundational academics. As Dr. Gil Tippy, who co-authored Respecting Autism with Dr. Greenspan, he talks about foundation academics. And what he talks about is these developmental capacities, the things that we talk about in the DIR framework, especially these very early developmental capacities, these first six, which we'll go over in the 101 course, are the foundation of engaging with the world. That you can be well regulated, that you're engaging with others, that you're able to communicate and to be able to have these abstract thoughts. And if you don't have that foundation, engaging in traditional academics is really hard. What happens is children will get to a place, if they don't have that foundation built, they'll get to a place of learning concrete information like letters and numbers, and they'll look like they're doing okay. But then when you get to having to pull together that information in a more thoughtful way, they'll struggle if we haven't built the foundation. So they get to, and I don't know I should know this, and I don't in India, the grading, but like here in the States, we'll start kindergarten and first and second grade, and they'll look good and they'll look like they're doing well. But when they start to hit third grade, the middle of elementary school, they start to struggle more because they don't have the ability to pull together that information. So schools can use DIR in how they think about their current curriculum and how they focus more on development versus just the learning part. But then floor time absolutely can be used as a therapeutic approach within the school setting. That is, using floor time with a group of children is a little more complex, but really exciting when you get it going. Because when you get the whole group, I think of it like dancing. So much of floor time is almost like this dance with the child, and you engage in this dance. It's not just about the mechanics of what you do. Like I often joke that I can learn the steps of a dance because my mind is very logical. I can remember things well, but it usually doesn't look very good when I do it because I struggle with the flow of the dance, right? And so I think about that interaction with a child as somewhat of a dance of getting that flow of the interaction. When you have a group of children and you can get that dance happening with the whole group, it is neat how you can create this learning environment where the children are really leading the learning, and they become so much more invested in learning versus becoming victims of, I have to go to school and I have to be taught something. And so floor time absolutely can be used as a therapeutic intervention, definitely by those that are more specifically, like if there's therapists that are specifically working with the child in the school, that's absolutely where it's used. Less schools are able to do it across, like with all the children. There definitely are schools that are completely floor time schools around the world, but there's less of that. But what we see mostly is teachers that really understand development and are focusing more on that in their classrooms, and then therapists like occupational therapists, speech therapists, the counselors and social workers and psychologists, and their interactions using floor time. But it can be used both individually and with the group in the school. And when a school really embraces development, it can shift so much of how the curriculum gets delivered, especially with the young children.
I guess that's very helpful for all the special educators attending the session today. I guess that has given you a clear picture on how we can integrate this in the classroom. And as a matter of fact, as an SLP who was actively practicing, doing speech therapy sessions in the past, I think DIR has also helped me in such a way that I've never seen the session the same way again. Because 101 kind of actually changed the way I look at my practice as well. And that being said, I think we have a question from an OT. It says, how can flow time work in a kid with high energy stimming as a desirable choice of play and parents can't keep up?
So I think what I'll start with is, regardless of the individual profile of the child, whether the child has needs lots of movement or is struggling to be at a just right zone of regulation to really be engaged with the world. Floor time, the I of DIR. So DIR is developmental, individual difference, relationship based. That's what it stands for. And I'll explain that in the 101 course. The I, the individual differences, is whatever that child's profile is understanding how those individual differences are impacting development. So the developmental framework is very much normed on more typical development. But when we understand the individual differences for that child, a lot based on biology, we also look at culture and environment and things as well, but a lot based on biology. On their unique individual profile, we can understand how that's impacting development. So if they're dysregulated much of the time, then that's going to impact their ability to engage socially with others. Because as soon as they start to engage, they become dysregulated, and then they don't develop just naturally the way most children will. They don't develop naturally this process of the human engagement, and then that leads into more communication and complex communication, and it creates challenges. So it's whatever that profile is, understanding it, and then helping support the development in the context of where their individual differences are. So if I have a child that needs a lot of movement in order to be engaged, then I'm going to work to have that movement be a part of the engagement. And as we build that regulation to what we'd kind of think about as this just right zone of regulation, then we can expand engagement, and we can help build that engagement process. So I can get into we can get into specific profiles, and it's really hard in a short question to dig deep enough into individual profiles. But what I'll say is, more broadly, it's understanding how that individual profile, whatever sensory, motor planning, whatever it may be, how that's impacting development. And then when we really get that, we end up being able to address both the whatever that individual difference is. We end up being able to address that sensory difference, and we end up being able to address the developmental process that sensory difference may be undermining. And so they're interconnected. But that's a centerpiece of what DIR is that are the individual differences, understanding that individual profile much broader than the diagnosis. Where honestly, most floor time practitioners are much less concerned about diagnosis and much more concerned about the individual profile and whatever is going on. And this is a parent implemented approach. There's a certain because we can talk about who the child is without necessarily having to talk about diagnostics and the more jargon and technical aspects. This, as a parent implemented approach, is about understanding that parents, these securely attached relationships, are the centerpiece of child development. And so floor time is all about helping parents do this with their children and truly understanding their child's individual profile. They don't need to understand the specific technical or neurological aspects of all of it, but they understand it enough to be able to understand how they can play a little differently, interact a little differently to support their child's development. And it is amazing when you mobilize the parents and help empower them, how quickly, I mean, I might show this in the 101, a dad that I worked with recently, who the child and had 9 months of speech therapy and wasn't speaking, was with us for 5 days and was using words and phrases. And it wasn't, and we did not have a speech therapist in the sessions for those 5 days. And it was all about connecting the parent and the child connecting. And dad said on the third day in reflection, he told me this afterwards. He said, on the third day, I wrote down that I fell madly in love with my son. He connected with his son in a way that he had not before. And he understood the individual profile of his kid much more. And he discovered this kid that was really exciting to him. And they connected as two humans rather than just around training him or teaching him and when the child was connected, then the child began to communicate much more. So that's I don't know if I answered the question as directly as the person may want. I think in the 101 you'll get more of that. But I want to take the opportunity to kind of broaden it out in regards to the individual differences.
Thank you so much. And a few words for professionals who are interested in, taking DAR certifications, and if you can explain them a little bit about the process and what happens after the 101.
I'm sorry, as far as the training, I was looking at the chat. As far as like the training program?
Yes. So regarding the training and
Yep.
what they can expect from 101 and after that, and their
So
plan
so
to getting certified.
So the 101 course is an introductory course that is really designed both for parents and professionals. We kind of see once we have the course happening, who's in the room, and we make adjustments as we go to try to meet the people that are in the course. So if we have more physical therapists in a course, we may do more around some of the motor aspects, and we cover it all no matter what. But if it's more parents, and anyway, so we make some adjustments as we teach the course, but it's an introductory course for anyone, whatever from no educational background on child development to PhDs in child development. And I think we do a fairly good job of connecting to all of that, to everyone in it, and really building this foundation for understanding what DIR is in a deep way, what these developmental capacities are. So when you understand specifically what complex communication really is and what shared social problem solving really is, you then can build that in the play. You can build that in the floor time. So it's building that core foundation of what the DIR is, how relationships really are the context that we grow and develop as humans, not just a tool in therapy, but really the foundation of how important relationships are in human development. So all that DIR stuff. And then we get into the floor time. And we show examples of floor time, lots and lots of videos, and some of the techniques of floor time to really build the core foundation. But it is designed to be more of I think it serves two purposes. One, introductory for some people that may not go further. So it can be a great introduction for parents that are getting coached by a professional. It can be a great introduction for maybe people that are working more as paraprofessionals that aren't really the therapists, but they're doing a lot of play with the child, and they're going to be coached by a professional to support the child. But then for all the professionals, it's an introduction to move into the professional certificate program. And the professional certificate program is a multi-step training program. We broke it up into years ago. You either were trained or you weren't trained. We made it into smaller, almost not modules because they're long enough courses, but you can earn a certificate to be able to practice floor time after one more course. And then you can continue from the basic to the proficient to the advanced and even become an expert. So there's 4 steps. But you can take one more course and be able to use floor time as a psychologist, educator, speech therapist, OT, whatever the PT, physiotherapist, whatever the profession is. And that all those courses typically are taught live online. That's the way we've done it for the last 16 years, something like that. And it works really well. Very small groups, no more than 12 people, with usually 2 experts leading the course. Very, very close, kind of, because it's really about the professional formation, not just learning information, but how am I interacting with this child? And lots of videos. So people are working with children, presenting videos of their own work. And that's a lot of the courses. The professional certificate courses are about the practicum of it, how you're using it in your therapy. So anyway, this is the introductory course, really building the foundation, and then moving into, for the professionals, moving into the professional certificate program, which I will say parents can audit those courses. Parents are not allowed to present their own children, but parents can, for half the cost, can join those courses. And sometimes parents will. It's not the best thing for parents is to get someone coaching them, but sometimes parents don't have someone in their community and they're building their own kind of through books and through their own learning. And so we do allow parents to join the courses as audit students, kind of a part of conversation and discussion, but they're not presenting their own children. It's not an appropriate place for parents to, for us to give feedback to parents about their own children. So we don't allow that, but parents can audit the courses too, just in case that's something that anyone would be interested in.
All right. Thank you so much. And I think we have come to the end of today's webinar. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Jeffrey Guenzel for sharing his expertise and valuable insights with us today. And thank you for helping us understand better on how development works and relationship-based approach to support children with autism and other developmental differences. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us today. We truly appreciate your time, your participation, and your thoughtful engagement throughout the session. We hope today's webinar has given you a meaningful introduction to the DIR approach and inspired to continue exploring this model in your professional practice. And if you're interested in taking this further and including this in your professional practice, Floreo is hosting DIR 101 Floortime training course on August. So if that's something that you're looking forward for, please get in touch with our team. And you can also follow our Instagram page. It's under the name Floreo Training. And I think that can leave more information for you if you're interested in doing this course. And thank you once again, Dr. Guenzel, and to each one of you for being part of today's webinar. And we hope to see you again on one of our upcoming training programs. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. And I'm excited to be coming to all of you in person. And I hope to meet many of you that came to the webinar.
Thank you so much. We'll see you all there.